In this video, you're going to learn what sports performance anxiety is and how this impacts you as an athlete. Hey there, I'm Eli Strawman, a performance coach and the founder of SuccessStartsWithin.com. Sports performance anxiety is one of the most common mental game challenges that I see in the athletes that I work with. And all sports performance anxiety is extreme worries about what may or may not happen. So for yourself, what kind of worries do you have about what might happen in your sport? Do you ever worry about making mistakes? Do you worry about playing really well? What about when it's a crunch time moment? Do you have a lot of worries about how am I going to perform in this moment and how I can't mess up because this moment is so important? When you have those kinds of worries and they're very intense to where then you have some physical symptoms of increased nervousness, that's going to be described as sports performance anxiety. We can break sports performance anxiety down into 3 different factors. And I like breaking it down into these 3 factors because it helps us see what we really need to focus on and what we need to work on in order to overcome and manage this sports performance anxiety. So the 3 factors are going to be cognition, autonomic arousal, and then the behavioral response. So the first one is cognition. Now for you as an athlete, all this involves are your thoughts. It's your mental reaction to the situation you're in. So let's take a game in general. The cognition you're having that's leading to you being anxious or you feeling anxious involves the thoughts that you have going into the game about maybe the team that you're playing against. Maybe you're having thoughts about how you haven't been playing well recently, so you have a lot of worries about how I need to play well today. All of those thoughts in response to the game are going to be cognition. And that's the first factor in performance anxiety because that's really where it all starts. Now here's the thing. These are not always going to be conscious thoughts that you're fully aware of. You might not be aware that you're even having these thoughts, but that's going to be the first factor that plays into this anxiety. Now, this is important because it's what we're going to really focus on when it comes to managing this anxiety. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But now the next factor is the autonomic arousal. All this means is the physical symptoms that you feel. So how do you feel when you are anxious? This might vary from player to player, but I know that for you, I imagine that you can think and almost feel what it feels like when you're anxious. For me, I always used to have that churning stomach. My throat would tighten up. I would have a lot of shaky hands. If I spoke, I would have a shaky voice. Those were my symptoms. I would also have a racing heartbeat. That's a very common one. But these symptoms are what are going to follow the cognition. And now for you as an athlete, you might not recognize that you have anxiety until you experience these symptoms. But here's what happens when you experience these symptoms. A lot of times they lead to more cognition. Because I've talked to many athletes who discuss being anxious about being anxious because they know that when they feel this anxiety, so when they feel those physical symptoms, they know that they're then probably not going to play well. So they start to fear the anxiety in the first place. So now these symptoms become triggers to signify to their mind, I'm anxious, I can't be anxious, and so they focus more on the anxiety, and that worsens the anxiety. That then leads us to the third factor, which is going to be the behavioral response. Now for you as an athlete, what do you think is going to be the behavioral response? Maybe it's performing poorly. But here's the thing. The main behavioral response for performance anxiety is going to be avoidance. You want to avoid the situation that's causing your anxiety. And so the reason that you probably said poor performance is because you're right. For the most part, when you're dealing with sports anxiety, you're going to underperform. Now, the reason that you're probably underperforming, it might have to do just simply with the physical symptoms and how they are keeping you from performing your best. But something else that can happen is you might be sabotaging yourself because you want to avoid the situation that's causing your anxiety. And the situation that's causing your anxiety is your performance. Now, I know you don't want to quit your sport, so the next best thing is sabotaging yourself. I've seen this many times, and I personally dealt with this. And it's an awful feeling to deal with, and it's an awful thing to have where you feel like you are the one holding yourself back from performing well. So when we look at these factors, and our goal is to pinpoint a main cause of anxiety in sports, the main cause that we can point to is in the cognition phase. And it's going to be worrying about the future. It's really that simple. Whenever you are feeling anxious, your attention is in the future. You're thinking about what's going to happen, what may or may not happen. For the most part, for you as an athlete, this is going to involve something you don't want to have happen. I was working with a swimmer. His anxiety was centered around not lowering his time. That's because that's what he didn't want to have happen. Basketball players I've worked with have talked about not wanting to miss shots. Baseball players not wanting to strike out. Tennis players not wanting to double fault on their serve. All of those worries that you have about the future, about what you don't want to have happen, that's going to really be the driving factor for your anxiety. Now, if you recognize that you're dealing with sports performance anxiety, you need to start taking steps to overcome your sports performance anxiety. There are two ways that you can go about doing this. Number one, you can go about it on your own. You can apply some tools and techniques, and you can really get to work on managing this anxiety for yourself. If that's what you want to do, I've linked a video right here that goes into more detail on steps you can take and techniques you can use to overcome anxiety as an athlete. Now, the second option for you is working with one-on-one mental performance coaching. I offer one-on-one mental performance coaching for athletes dealing with sports performance anxiety. During this coaching, what we're going to do is first identify what kind of thoughts you're having, how are you feeling in certain situations, and what are the main situations and times during practices and games where you are dealing with this anxiety. From there, what we're going to do is put together a plan, and then through weekly coaching sessions, we're going to work on managing and overcoming this anxiety, and also, most importantly, proactively building positive mental skills, such as the ability to manage pressure, the ability to calm yourself down before the game, and then also increasing your confidence. Now, if you're interested in learning more about the one-on-one mental performance coaching I offer for overcoming sports performance anxiety, go ahead and click the link that I put in the description below. If you have any questions about sports performance anxiety or any other sports psychology topic, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos each day on sports psychology and mental training. Thank you for watching, and I wish you the best of success in all that you do.